Hey there guys, and happy whatever day it is that you're watching this video. So today we've got a really interesting one. It's a Burundi coffee from Cupper's Choice, one of my favourite local roasters to where I live. And it's interesting because I've had to do some reading for this one and learn a little bit more about the process and how the coffee kind of comes to get the flavours that it does. So this will be a good one, I think, and definitely an educational one for me. So kick back, get yourselves a coffee, and welcome to Today I Brewed. So, a little bit about the coffee. As I said, it's from Cupper's Choice, and they are an excellent roastery, based in Sheffield and Chesterfield, I think. And I've had coffees there from them before, and they've always been delicious. So, I had high expectations for this one, because, well, I expected the same quality. Best thing about this coffee is it's a Burundi. And I do love Burundi coffees. I've got such a love for them. And much like my other love for African coffees, it definitely sits in there below Kenyan, I think, with, as I said before, Ethiopians sitting at the top. So what makes this coffee so special? Well, it's a yeast-inoculated coffee, which means it's fermented with yeast during the process before it's hulled, dried, and shipped over to anyone who wants it. But let's talk about it in a bit more detail. So as I said, the coffee is from Burundi, and it's kind of processed in the Kibingo washing station. The process itself is Sema yeast inoculated natural, and it's a red bourbon varietal, and I have got a big love for red bourbons. As I've probably said before, it's grown at an altitude of between 1700 and 1900 metres above sea level, and the producers are the Greenco smallholder farmers. So it's a collective of farmers who have a small plot of land who kind of come together to process the coffee all at once. So I guess the interesting part is, what is yeast inoculated coffee? There are 3 different types of yeast from the Lal Cafe yeast selection, each with a different set of characteristics that enhance certain parts of the coffee itself. And the 3 of them are, number 1 is the Oro yeast, which increases the mouthfeel and the body of the coffee, and it also draws out a bit more of the red fruitiness that's in the cherry itself. The next one, which is this one, is the Sema yeast, and this one has a higher sweetness to it, and it increases the citrus notes within the coffee. And the last one is well named Intenso, and this one elevates the floral and tropical notes of the coffee, and it also improves and gives a more balanced acidity to the cherry and the final cup. But how does this process take place? What is the process of yeast inoculation? I will do a video on coffee processes somewhere down the line, once I've got a bit more research and a bit more knowledge to present to you guys. But the process starts with the cherries being harvested, and only the ripest cherries are picked, which is a good thing because it means we're getting the highest quality coffee in the cup as a result. The coffee or the cherry is then pulped, so it removes the outer skin and some of the pulp itself. Next, the cherry is placed in a fermentation tank, and there is, I believe if I've got my numbers correct, 1 gram of yeast for every 2 kilograms of the coffee cherries in the tank. And then it's sealed to create an anaerobic environment, which means there's no air in there. And while the process can go up to about 96 hours, this one is only fermented for 36. And I'm assuming that this process for this one is just the way this coffee tasted the best after that amount of time. Maybe other coffees will taste better if they are fermented for longer, or for a little bit less time as well. So finally, after sorting the coffee, the cherries and the parchment cherry is taken to a pre-drying station where the coffees are laid out and they are inspected for defects and damaged beans. And the reason they do it here is because the damages and defects are easier to see when the coffee is wet. I imagine it's a lot more difficult when you're on those big raised drying beds to look at dry coffee and pick out defects. And then after that inspection, the coffee is taken to the drying beds where it is then going to be dried to get the moisture content down between 10 and 11%. And once that's done, after continuous kind of moving around and continuing to inspect the beans for defects and damages, the coffee is then finished off in the process and it's brought to us to roast and brew and drink. So with all that long explanation out the way, let's talk about how the coffee kind of brewed. Let's brew it together and go through the process. Now, as the coffee was grinding, the tasting notes were pretty out there. So I haven't mentioned them yet, but the tasting notes on this card here are cola cube sweetness and juicy with a nice pineapple acidity. And on the grind, those cola cubes were definitely coming out in that aroma. I mean, it was insane. I like cola cubes. They are a delicious sweet, but never did I expect to get them in a cup of coffee. It was such a wonderful aromatic experience, and definitely a great sensory one. There was a little bit of the pineapple coming out underneath, and the juicy, well, I mean, you can feel the juice, as it were, but that kind of came out more in the final brew. So when we move on to the brewing process, now you can see just how good this coffee looks as it brews. And I will not bang on about how much I love a good bloom. But this was a sexy ass coffee to do. Like, it was fantastic. And the aromas were so much more potent, so prominent in the brew, especially the cola cubes and the pineapple just really mixing well together. Almost like pineapple smelling Coke, the drink, not the drug. And it was a great combination of flavours, and they were so well balanced. It was just raising expectation for when the brew was finished. And I think in terms of all the brews that I've done for this video and before, this is perhaps the quickest one. So usually I brew for about 4.5 minutes. It's kind of a profile that I quite like, and I usually aim to get most of my coffees to that sort of time scale. This one, however, was a little bit shorter. This came through about 3 minutes 40, 3:45, which is definitely quick-ish. You know, I'm brewing 28.5 grams per cup. So it feels quick when I'm used to a 4.5 minute brew. But that didn't matter because it smells incredible. Like, the aromas coming out of this are wonderful. So let's give it a whiff. Let's see how it tastes, let's see how it smells, and we'll just talk about it. So we've definitely got those cola cubes coming with a lovely hint of pineapple, and that kind of juicy descriptor can be smelled here definitely feels like it's going to be a juicy cup, and it looks like it's going to be juicy. It's got such a thick body to it. Now, as this is a fermented coffee, and I've been banging on about my feel and appreciation for fermented coffees in previous videos, but I'm trying to learn more about them, and the only way to do that is to drink them. And I feel like my position is changing a little bit. I still feel like perhaps one of these every so often is enough, but as I've got to get through the whole tub and kind of learn my brew recipe, I've grown to appreciate them a bit more over the course of the last few weeks. But one is definitely enough. Like this, after this coffee, it'll be quite nice to not have another fermented one for a little while. But I feel like my ability to get past the fermentation is getting better. I feel like I'm being able to taste the actual tasting notes a bit more and not just the ferment itself. So why don't we pour it and drink it? Now that is delicious. The coffee's been sat here for about 5-10 minutes, and it's cooled to a place where those tasting notes are really coming out. The body is thick, like it is a wonderful thickness. I'd probably say like medium to heavy in terms of mouthfeel, but it rolls around the mouth just wonderfully. Like, what an experience on the palate to kind of have this roll around. The pineapple here is a bit more prominent than the cola cubes in the aroma, but you can still taste that sweetness of them. Like, you know, that kind of sugary feel that you get? That's the kind of mouthfeel that it has, with that little hint of cola cube flavour. The pineapple acidity is there, and I think at this point is the most prominent taste in the cup. And that juicy descriptor is absolutely bang on. It is a juicy cup, and it is really feeling juicy in the mouth. I don't know if you can tell my excitement and my joy from drinking this, but this is a fantastic cup of coffee. And as I said before, probably more due to the roasting process than my actual ability to brew. But it's got a lovely finish on it. It's very clean, with a slight, ever so slight dryness on the end, but like a juicy dryness you would probably get from a pineapple, which is probably where that's coming from. But this is a great cup of coffee, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's slowly changing my perception on the fermentations. I think the other two that I've done a few weeks ago were also fermented, and I feel like I'm appreciating them more. Doesn't mean that I would prefer them over like a regular natural or a regular washed, but I'm starting to kind of get that appreciation for them a little bit more with each time I drink a cup. So yeah, this is a delicious coffee, and you should definitely go and get some. I recommend it. And the great thing about this is on the website it says that if you want to learn more, you can just email Harley, the roaster of the coffee. So I did, just to ask him about a bit more detail about the coffee itself and the process of yeast inoculation, and he replied in great time and gave me a wonderful resource to go and check it out for myself, while explaining the process as well in the email. So I take my hat off to you, dude. Really appreciate the time that you took to send me that information, and my appreciation to you is what a great cup of coffee this is. So that's me done. How do you guys feel about yeast inoculations or fermentations in general? what do you think about them? And this has been a really educational one for me because I've had to learn about the process itself, which has been great. It's been so much fun, and I'm glad that I got this coffee to learn about the process with. So if you haven't got a coffee yet, go get yourselves one. Put your feet up and relax. Take it easy. And thank you for joining me on today's Today I Brewed.